enough of that. If you wanna see more of that shit, go to like the end of the video. I didn't like record everything I was doing on official servers when I was meshing and exploiting and shit, but for the most part, a lot of shit's gonna be there. So the time has come to make another one of those videos. So what is this video going to be about? No, this video is not just going to be about the major exploit which has recently been patched. It's going to be a bit more than this. I'm going to split this video in a few different parts. It's gonna be super long, I apologize for that, but you know, it's like I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Having said that, you know, it's still gonna be long. I won't explain every single exploit in great detail, how it works, how it was found, all the, you know, things involved in it. I'll just explain the basic principles of each exploit. First, I'll obviously talk about the major exploit, the one, you know, that all the drama is about. Followed by that, I'll talk about some visual exploiting. Followed by that, I'll talk about meshing and exploiting to do with meshing. Normally I don't report glitches, but this time I'll actually include a lot of my own findings. Like the major exploit which I'm going to be include is, you know, it was found by substitutes, so I'll talk about that. Everything else that I'm going to show, such as the visual exports or the meshing techniques, those are my own discoveries that I haven't really shared with anyone but one person. So first, let's start with the major big exploit that everyone's talking about. How this part of the video is going to work, I'll have some footage of the actual exploit being done on official service playing right about now. In the meantime, I'll be explaining what the exploit can do, etc. I won't like find specific footage and explain all the, you know, this is how this look, this is how this look. I will have a lot of footage played at the very end of the video after I talk about visual exploits, after I talk about meshing. So at the very end I will have some footage playing there, so you can, you know, just watch through it if you're interested. For the most part, the only footage which I will actually show after I'm done talking about this, before I actually start talking about the visual and meshing exploits, is I'll talk about one of the duping exploits that was leaked. Like I said, the original founder of this exploit is Substitute. However, like I said on Reddit, Substitute should not be blamed for anything. He has never actually given me this exploit on anyone for that matter. What happened was, originally when this exploit was found about, I don't know, 6 months ago, like beginning of the new service, a certain sentence was leaked. Due to that sentence being leaked, a certain investigation was made and certain conclusions were made. And because of those conclusions, it happened that, you know, I have the exploit. Substitute has also obviously never abused this exploit on the real servers, can't say the same about me. But the point which I'm trying to make is, don't blame him for anything. Even though this exploit has originally been found by Substitute, as I have said, Substitute has never actually given this exploit to anyone. The version which I'm using has been developed by a very good friend of mine, DOUGY. DOUGY is literally the only person I trust in Ark. He's the only person I would ever share exploits with. And honestly, even though DOUGY is also a huge exploiter and found lots of big things, and even this exploit he spent countless weeks working on, honestly, he is the nicest guy in the world, and if you knew him, you would think the same. Big props to him. So what is this major exploit? Well, to put it short, this exploit made you sort of an admin. You didn't actually have access to any admin commands, you couldn't actually spawn anything, but you could do some very game breaking mechanics. So what could you do with this major exploit? You had an aimbot, you had an ESP radar, you could bypass pretty much any ping code by accessing remote inventory of anything, and you could access the inventory of anything from pretty much another side of the map if there's nothing in the line of sight. Having said that, even though you could access it, you couldn't actually take anything out or do anything once you access, because there is a check in game for how close you are to a certain number of fingers you know, random Simpsons character has. Very little people had this exploit. Now what they might be referring to would be all of the things that got leaked from the exploit. Basically this exploit allowed for many things, right? And you know, there were certain dupe methods that came out of this exploit. Sadly, I'm not going to talk about them for certain reasons, but one of the methods that get leaked, and that's the cooking pot dupe. Basically it allowed you to create custom recipes to craft any ingredient, right? So some of those recipes were given to some mega tribes, but honestly not many people actually had them, and they were like, you know, solo plays individuals, not like the whole tribe was using them. They did not make that much out of them anyway. Not to mention, when the patch actually hit, all the custom recipes and any raw ingredients were actually deleted. I mean, in theory, if you crafted any C4 from the ingredients that came from the cooking pot exploit, that C4 would stay, but only raw ingredients would get deleted. I don't know, like wildcard's definitely not saying how it actually is with this exploit. Mega tribes did not have this exploit, and even the very few people that did have this exploit, none of them really were a part of like a big mega tribe. Most of them were just, you know, hanging around, like, you know, with other people, chilling, or just, you know, doing random shit. One thing that is true though, the new servers, they are definitely far from being clean. There are millions of duped items going around, and obviously you won't just, you know, see them like on Legacy being spammed, because nobody wants death investigation, nobody wants to get dev wiped. The servers are not clean, by no means. There are a lot of items that are duped. Anyway, that's about it for the explanation of the major exploit. More or less everything that was important was said. I'm not going to talk about every little feature of the exploit. If you're interested in what else was possible, go to the end of the video and you'll see everything that I've been doing using the exploit on the official service in the past 6 months. Obviously I didn't record every footage, but I'll show you some parts that I did record. Alright, so in this part of the video I'm going to show and teach you a bit about meshing and glitching in Ark. Everything which you will see, there are my own discoveries and they still work on the official service as of now, due to the fact that I've never shared these exploits with anyone but one person. For the most part, I'm going to not only show you some meshing techniques, but I'm also going to explain to you the concept of meshing and how to get around certain anti-mesh protections. Now you might wonder why am I not reporting this directly to the devs, for the bounty process. Well, first of all, I don't really care about their bounty process, I never did. Also, I don't really report exploits much in the first place, but when I do, like on Legacy with the full inventory dupe, the best way to get something fixed is to make a video about it and make it public and common knowledge. So where should I start? Now, I'm obviously going to show you this in single play because it's going to be easier this way to get around the map, but everything works on official servers. So the very first thing which you have to understand is inside a mesh there are, let's call it, two type of meshes. So I don't know, on the map, in places under the map. One place is a place on which if you do get inside you can build. So for example, actually this is a very good example. So right here I'm inside the mesh and it says can't place structure here, but right here you actually can, and that's pretty much how it is for most of the Ark. Like on Ragnarok, actually most places it says can't place structure here. On center, for the most part, you can almost build anywhere outside of the mesh. That's why center is a joke. On island it's like 50-50. Now, just because it says, well, first of all, it's much easier to get inside a mesh in which you can build inside. However, it's not actually impossible to get into a mesh in which you can't build. There are actually ways to do it. Now, even though it says I can't place structure here, this doesn't apply to every single structure. There are few unique structures that can actually be placed everywhere and they help greatly with meshing. Those two structures which I use for meshing is a cage and a tent. So as you know, right here I have a chair, for example, right? I can't place it here. I can't place a sleeping bag here. Foundation, wall, pillar, whatever you want to place, you cannot place it in this spot under the mesh because it's not a buildable spot, but you can build here a cage or a tent. Now, how can this help you with meshing? Well, let's start off by showing some meshing techniques. For the most part, the very well-known meshing technique was that a lot of people actually realized was chair. You would place a chair like this, you would sit on it and you would and you would be able to build inside, right? And that was actually patched. How Wildcard patched this is they made it once you sit on the chair you can't actually build. See, it doesn't allow me. And even though I can equip whatever I wanna place first and sit on the chair, I mean this is a bad example because it's actually not a buildable spot, but let's move. Fine. Right, so even though this is green, I can't actually place it, so that doesn't work. But there are other things you can actually still do with the chair. I'm obviously going to show you more advanced techniques for meshing. I'm not going actually to show you every technique for meshing, I have to leave something myself, but I will show you enough meshing techniques to get you through every wall. Now, what you can actually still do with the chair is you can, let's say, equip a tent, right? You sit on the chair and you place it once and you stand up. Now I'm actually too far, so this is not going to work, so let's do it with a cage for this example to be easier. So I placed it once, I stood up, and now I can still actually place it. It's placed. Now what you can do with this? Well, I particularly don't like meshing techniques that evolve around RNG. But there is actually one meshing technique. I mean, I'll never use this, but I'll show you for the print, for the sake of showing you. So let's try it actually again with the tent. Yeah, I did it. So basically, as you can see, the tent goes, you can rotate it to actually get outside of the mesh. And now what can you do with this? You can actually get yourself stuck in the tent. Let's see. More or less like this. Didn't work in this example, but for the most part you can actually get yourself stuck in the tent, and once you get yourself stuck in the tent, with enough RNG of going to sleep, like getting unconscious, logging out, logging on, or using narcotics, you can end up on the other side, but it can take you a lot of attempts, and you might fail a lot. It's not really something I would call a meshing technique, it's RNG. I don't really like it. If I show you the other meshing techniques, let me first show you what is actually still possible with the chair. Now, there are some spots in Ark in which you will actually get stuck when standing up of the chair. Yeah, this is the spot. Okay, so in this particular spot, if I sit on the chair and now I stand up, I got stuck inside. Now on the servers this actually works much better than on single play, because on the servers you never fall. You're standing perfectly still. But the concept is more the same. Like, yeah, now I'm standing still, so it's still gonna work. So now that I'm actually halfway inside the mesh, I can't actually move forward, but I can place a sleeping bag. And also, if this was a non-buildable spot, there is a way for you to actually get inside also, because you can place the tent, and you don't even need RNG process for this. You place the tent, and you get a climbing pick, and you climbing pick yourself into the tent, and you're inside the mesh now. I'll show you this example on like a different map. Alright, so this is a popular building spot on Ragnarok, and people call this the Alpha Rock. Now there are a few ways to mesh this, but the easiest way and the fastest way that I've actually been doing is this way. Alright, this spot right here. So more or less on this spot, if you place a chair like right about here, you sit on it, you stand up, you place a tent, you get a climbing pick, boom, you're inside. Now, like I said, this is one of those spots where you cannot actually build. You cannot place a sleeping bag here. It says can't place structure here, but tent is one of those unique structures, so that's an easy way to actually, glitch into such a place, and then you can just, climb and pick yourself way up to the top. So you would climb and pick like this way, and you're pretty much on the Alright, so now that this technique is shown, let me show you some other techniques. Technique which I'm going to show you only works on, well, it doesn't only work on straight walls, but it's easiest to do it on straight walls. It can work on any wall, mesh, or whatever you want to call it in theory, but if the wall is not straight, it gets tricky. The best example for this is going to be the scorched shield, since it's perfectly straight. Alright, so more or less reach the shield. Here is the shield. Now the shield is perfectly straight, so you only need two things, well, three things. You need a foundation, a ladder, and a sleeping bag. So you get the foundation out, and you align it more or less straight with the shield, like this. Then you place the ladder like right here, so you can climb it, and you start climbing it, and you're actually stuck inside the shield. Now that you're stuck in the shield, you can place a sleeping bag on the other side, and then you can spawn on it. Well, in theory you can probably do some other things. I think, yeah, you can place a ladder right here, and I should be able to climb it down. Yeah, there we go. So that also works. In some places where you can't build, you can also get around this by placing a tent or a chair, trying to climb onto it, and And there's also some other things you can do, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. Nobody knows about this, and you know, this has always existed. Like I said, it works best on straight walls, but it can work on any wall. It's just a lot trickier. Alright, so the next technique that I'm going to show you is going to involve the climbing pick and the tent. Now there are quite a few methods to gain inside the mesh with the climbing pick. I'm not going to show you all of them, but I'll show you this one. Now this technique works best on walls that are actually not straight. Actually, this doesn't work on straight walls at all. It only works on walls that are not straight, and it can work more or less on every wall that's not straight, but sometimes it gets tricky. So for example, this spot right here, the wall, the mesh, it's not straight at all. As you can see, it like pushes me around when I try to jump. So what you do is first you get the tent, you try to find a spot to place it as close to the mesh wall as possible. You place it once, you rotate it, and basically you're gonna try to place it in a way so you leave a small gap between the tent and the mesh wall. So let's see, like right here. This should work. Now, as you can see, this green marker, that means I can hook onto the wall, the mesh, whatever. So the trick with this meshing technique is you try to find the spot in between the tent and the mesh wall. So in theory, you're still gonna climb and hook yourself onto the tent, but like the very last possible snap point that gives you as close to the tent as possible. And now if this works, the moment I climb and hook myself onto the tent, the game's actually gonna think that I'm inside and it's gonna let me build. So let's try and see if this works. As you can see, it worked, allows me to build here. Now I'm not actually inside the mesh right now. Like as you can see, you know, I'm still stuck. It's not, you know, I can't just walk in, so you still need to actually build here. Or you can, you know, just do this. But yeah. If the place is a place which you can't build, you can always use the tent and climb and hook yourself onto it, but there's actually another trick to it, because usually, you know, climb and hook yourself onto the tent, you're actually too high to climb and hook yourself onto the other tent that you're gonna place on the ground, but there is a trick to it, and you know, if you mess enough with the game, you'll figure it out. There are obviously more techniques, I know. I'm not going to show you everything, and also there are also some techniques that involve multiple players. So some techniques that involve 2 players, some techniques that involve 3 players. For the most part, I only use techniques that can be done by myself, and that they don't require anything expensive, such as dinos or like, you know, expensive things like rocket turret or whatever people are trying to come up with. I can tell you one easy meshing technique that involves water. Is basically what you do is you get a raft, you get a chair, you drive the raft with the chair inside the wall, you get unconscious or you log out, log on, and you're gonna be inside the actual mesh. I'm not going to show you this because it involves some RNG process which I hate, so I rarely use this technique, but for example, like on this particular spot, you know, you can just sit on this chair, stand up, sit on this, get on, put this tent too far. Let me put it closer. Right here. So basically you're like in a compartment right now, so you're gonna keep going this way. You're gonna place a raft right here with that chair at the end. The chair has to be like inside the wall. You're gonna become unconscious, and when you wake up, you will either wake up on this side or this side. It's RNG, but it will do. There are some better methods, but sadly I am not going to show you. Once you're inside, you know, you just swim. You can actually build right here. Now you have to remember that some things on single player are not the same as on the server. So for example, when the cave de-renders on single player, like right here, right there, like right now, there is no hitbox. I can't use like a grapple hook, but on a server there's always an invisible hitbox, so you can always grapple yourself onto it. Now, to explain you some concepts of getting around the mesh anti-protections, well, the very first protection is the teleport zone. So one thing to also mention, with as you know, like, you know, different character specification in Ark allows you for different things. So for example, like, you know, longer arms, slightly longer reach and shit like this. With meshing, it's best to make your character as small as possible. Now the very first concept which I'm going to show you how to get around, at least one way how to get around it, is the teleport zones. In Ark, some places are programmed in a way that if you're inside the mesh, the game will port you up straight above to the closest possible ground location the game can find. So for example, right now I'm actually inside a illegal zone. Now it doesn't actually teleport me because I'm using ghost mode, but now that let me disable it. So right now I can still walk, but it's gonna port me up any second. Right there, it ported me up because the game knows I'm not allowed to be there. Now the game doesn't specify this for like every mesh. You know, if it did, the game would be a lot harder to mesh. Only does it for sub. But the most part with Blue Obelisk, nobody actually ever meshed this before myself, and people don't really get how I did this. So if you're inside this part of Blue Obelisk, there's no teleport zone here. You can stand here, you can chill here, you can even build here, but there is teleport zone all below. So if I jump, right, if I jump down, it should port me up. Well, it's not going to because the game is a piece of shit in single player. It will port you up on the server. So how do you actually get around the teleport zones? First, let me explain to you how the teleport zones work. The very first thing which you have to understand, the teleport zones only affect players. If you have a dino, like honestly, you could have a quest right here. Even though this zone right here, it's illegal, it should port me up. It will port you up on the server. Any dino that's not ridden by a player will never get ported up. So you're thinking, okay, so you can, like, I don't know, get a griffin, climb in, use a grapple hook onto it and call it, right? Well, no, the griffin will not get teleported, but you will. The game also checks for the player status. The player has to be alive in order to get teleported. Unconscious. If you are unconscious, the game will not teleport you actually. So that's one way to get around the teleport zone. So how could you use this? Well, for example, if you glitch into this cave and you get a quest here. So like, you know, either with the in the past I would, you know, just put a transmitter here or use the exploit to just, you know, summon the quests from my own inventory. You would put a lot of bets on the quests and you would whistle it using this thingy. There's no green marker. But you hear the sound, so you know, it's a whistle to basically command a dino to fly to the location you specify. The quest is gonna fly there, and you're gonna keep spawning on the beds and keep whistling to fly higher and higher and higher until it reaches this spot. And you're gonna be safe. So how else can you do this? Well, I'll show you actually the way which I've actually been using for meshing this place. It's, I believe, the most efficient way. So like on a server, you would basically stand here. You would use a grapple hook to grapple hook onto this wall, and then you would use climbing pick here. So let's see. All right. So you can basically use a climbing pick onto this wall. You need a climbing pick with a really good durability, and honestly what you're gonna do is you're gonna climbing pick yourself way up to the top. Now basically the climbing pick bypasses the teleport zone. In order for you to get teleported, you have to be alive, but the game also looks for the animation state which you are in. So basically if you are riding a dino, that's an animation state, it will teleport you. If you're sitting on a chair, it will teleport you, but funny enough, even though it will teleport you, you will get teleported and still be in the animation of sitting on the chair. Same thing with the ladder. With the ladder, actually, there is a way to get around the teleport zones. It's kind of RNG sometimes, but what you do is you place a really long ladder, like on a quest, and then you get on the ladder and you whistle the quest to fly up. And basically, the moment it teleports you, you're gonna be like still attached to the ladder, and the moment you move slightly down or up, you're gonna get teleported back to the quest, and then you can whistle again to fly forward and do this over and over. But there is some RNG involved in this, because sometimes you will actually get detached from the ladder and just fall. For the most part, the easiest way is to actually use the climbing pick, because it bypasses everything. So you basically keep climbing hook this way, this way, this way, like right here onto this, right here, and eventually you would reach the top. This is what I did when I meshed T, Bob2, A-Team, and anyone else on Blue Obelisk. Alright, so how else can you get around teleport zones? Well, let me show you the famous cave on Scorched. Right, another thing to consider with the teleport zones is they only affect certain coordinates. So for example, on Scorched, there are teleport zones all below the map, but they do end eventually. And so, you know, a lot of people thought this cave right here was unmeshable until I meshed it on Legacy, and how I did is I literally go below the coordinates and went up. So to show you what I mean is, if I enable Ghost and I try to go through the ground, well, I think I'm too close to the cave, it ports me up. Like, as you can see, the game just, you know, the game doesn't like me being here. It knows I'm in an illegal zone, it teleports me up. So how do you mesh this place? Oh, you know, how do you get around such mechanic? First you get outside of the shield, so I just flew past it. So, you know, you're outside of the shield and you're gonna keep flying until you reach the spot where you can get below the map. Right here. So now what you do, alright, so now that you're here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna type into the console show the book animation. Now this works on official servers, and the coordinates which you instead and the Z coordinates. So right now we are like Z minus 16579. So we know at this coordinate of the Z axis you do get teleported because that's how the teleport zone is specified. As far as my memory tells me, it ends more or less at minus 50 plus. So let's keep flying. So, you know, I keep looking at the coordinates. So like Z minus 4. Whoop. I got ported. So let's try again. Alright. I think we're low enough now. Now you have to more or less know where the cave is. I think it's somewhere in that direction. And just keep flying within the Z axis being like minus 5 plus. Now one thing that you do have to know about this cave in particular, this cave has a death zone. If you enter it or you touch it, it's gonna kill you. So you have to actually fly like to the side of it first. I'm pretty sure the cave is like where those buildings are, up top, more or less. Also another thing to consider, if you fly too low, you're actually gonna die. Not because of like some death zone, but because that's literally where the map ends, and anything that gets there gets evaporated. Nope, I am not. Oh, I was. Never mind. Alright, so yeah, as you can see, I've actually gone to the cave and I got dismounted, and that's something that's actually going to happen because you cannot fly in the cave. You will get dismounted here. So what you do is, this is obviously the safest with the quads, but I usually do it with the griffin. In case I get dismounted, I'm just gonna grapple onto it. So now I'm just gonna whistle the griffin to fly forward. Let's just speed this up a bit. And there you go, you're inside the cave. So like in this cave, you can build in a lot of spots, like right here for example, or right here, and then yeah, you're inside. Now the very last thing which I'm going to show you with the teleport zones is also how it affects like island and water. It's basically the same concept. On island there's teleport zone more or less everywhere below the ground, but it ends. One of the easiest way to mesh something like the hard sea cave, well, the easiest way will be to mesh directly above it, but it gets tricky. The easiest way is to actually mesh to a different cave that nobody ever builds, and from there you swim below the map onto the hard sea cave. So let me show you. So basically you would mesh out to like, you know, be in this spot. Then what you would do is, you know, I would like grapple higher. There's gonna be like water. It's a bit shitty on the server because the cave derenders and it doesn't exist. Basically the concept is you try to, I mean this cave in particular is a bit dodgy. It has a lot of lava that's actually gonna kill you. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna swim like right here to get to this spot. To mesh outside of this cave, you can use like the tent which I've showed you, the foundation, or another technique, which is something I usually do. Now you will get in this spot, and more or less, as far as I remember, now there are teleport zones and there's lava, but you can get around them. If you're out close to the cave, the game's actually not gonna purge you up. So I think it's more or less this. You're gonna jump into the water like right about here. So this worked. I evaded the teleport zone. So right now I'm not gonna get teleported. So what you can do now, let me just speed this up for the sake of it, is you literally just gonna swim. You need to swim pretty low actually, almost touching the brown ground, or you will get teleported. Do not touch the brown ground, you will actually die. It will evaporate you, like literally remove it. There's not even gonna be a body bag. There was actually one theory I had how to dupe with it. Sadly did not work. Wildcard anticipated for this. Because basically, as you know, once you initiate the transfer, game makes you like god mode and shit. But one way to actually kill yourself, even while in that god mode, is to touch this brown ground. It will kill you even through the god mode. So now you're in this cave. There are easy ways and faster ways to do this, but this is one safe way that pretty much always works. Every cave on island is meshable. The hardest one, which I would say, is probably the Carno cave, and I'm not going to show you how to do it. But if you want to know which cave is the safest to build on, it's definitely the Carno cave. So another thing which you can actually do with the teleport zones is, even though they're meant to actually protect places from being meshed, not only you can get around them, you can actually abuse them to get inside pretty much like literally any single base location. What I'm about to show you is very expensive, and even though I've always been duping on servers, I never really did this. Because it's just, honestly, it's too expensive. There is some RNG and it's just, a lot of headache. But in theory, it's a concept that can work. For example, this is the Alpha Rock, right? I've already shown you how to mesh it, but let me show you what else you can do with teleport zones. So this spot right about here, yep, this spot. Like on Ragnarok, there are very few places where you can actually build inside the mesh, but you can actually build right here. As you can see, you can actually build here. So to actually mesh in here, you would just you can use the tent technique I've shown you. Just mesh into this wall, this, and you're in here. So what you can do to abuse the teleport zone is, inside this water there is no teleport zone, but let's say we'll spawn a Bronto. Alright, so we've got Bronto. Let's speed this up a bit. Now we have to get directly under the Alpha Rock. I can't exactly remember where it is, but yeah, there we go. I did it. So as you can see, the game teleported me straight on top of the Alpha Rock. Now if there was a base here, you'd get teleported with the Bronto. So as you can imagine, the concept behind this is, if you have enough dinos to waste, you basically hit the teleport zone, they all get teleported. One thing to remember, as I have mentioned with the teleport zones, only the player gets teleported. So if you're riding a dino, you and the dino gets teleported, but if you have any dinos following you, they will not get teleported, so you'll always need players, in theory, riding every dino that you want teleported. Alright, so I think I've explained like most of the important concepts of meshing. Every single technique that I've shown you, I've found by myself, and I haven't found them randomly. Most of them, as you saw, they're quite logical. So with enough experimentation in single player, you can come up to these conclusions, and you can find even more meshing techniques. For the most part, if Wildcard fixes everything that I've shown, it will make meshing significantly harder, even for myself. Now there are some more concepts I could show with meshing, and also explain why some things work the way they do, but honestly that would just make this video like 3 hours long, and I'm pretty sure the video is already gonna be long enough. So I think this will do for the meshing part. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about the INI configuration. Basically, back on Legacy, I made some mistakes. Like when I made my duping video, I kinda talked too much about the disconnect feature, which some people actually started thinking and actually discovered some of the exploits that I've been using, which I did not talk about. For example, back with the disconnect, what you could do in the past, if you had, let's say, if I had like, I know, players standing right here, right? And I was like, behind, and there was like no rock or tree or dino in the line of sight of me and the players, and I would disconnect myself and I would shoot all of them. By the time I connected back, even if they were literally on the other side of the map, they would die. You could also pretty much switch off any generator you wanted to if you were offline, because there was no checking game for how close you are to a structure. Because I said some things in my DOUGY video, it made people creative, some people realize this, and now all of this is patched, and that's the same concept with the INI file. With the INI I kinda made a similar mistake on Legacy, basically when I went to invade one of Spartan's servers and I put a lot of C4 on the squid. I took a screenshot and the screenshot was actually in water, and people start asking me, why do you why is your water so clear? And everyone started like messing with INI configuration. I've never actually given my INI configuration to anyone but one person. Basically my INI configuration I have created through days and days of testing literally every single variable that modifies anything visually in the game. I found basically there's a console variable called dump console commands, and if you know how to use it, it will display every single variable that's in Ark. So I have had a list of every single variable in Ark, every show flag, every R dot, every T dot, whatever, every single variable, and I've tested literally every line by line. Some lines only works when other lines are enabled, but for the most part I managed to create a really good configuration. So as you can see, like my trees have no leaves. It's pretty much always day for me. Even you can see the sky is dark. That pretty much it means it's night, because the sky I've actually configured in a way so when it's day it will be blue. So let's speed this up to show you. As the time goes forward, you see that the sky is gonna change. I can obviously see everything in water. It's crystal clear. No dial effect, no X-plan, there's never any fog, and this is for every map, not just island, but for Island Center, Ragnarok, Aberration. I'll basically include my INI configuration in the description. I'll also tell you a bit what some lines of code do. There are basically some show flags that I don't actually use, but you can like disable all of the ground. You can actually disable the water from top as well, which is not really good. It makes you see what's inside the water, but it makes it really difficult for you to know where the water starts. As you can see, there's day now. Wildcard's really lazy when it comes to fixing stuff like this. They always do like band-aid fixes. So back on Legacy they fixed what enabled the custom variables to be put into the game, which is basically the engine.ini file. Now some people have realized that you can do this also in another way, and that's through another file called consolevariables.ini. Those two are not the only ways that this can be done, and I know Wildcard's planning to patch some things in the upcoming patch. I'm actually very curious if they're gonna do another lazy fix and just disable consolevariables.ini. If that is the case, there are other ways to enable it until they actually fix what the variables do, like hard fixes, which I don't even know if they can do. This is Unreal Engine, it's not their own engine. I don't know if they can actually do this, but unless they can do this, there will always be ways to force these custom variables, even through hacks, to just literally force them. Even though some other people have managed to figure out. Alright, so like I said, not every show flag is actually included, but there are some interesting ones which you can still actually use to gain some sort of unintended effect, other than just my own notes that I'll display on screen. I'm going to include my own constant variable file, and I'm going to include my research notes and ground, like all together. There's literally gonna be no grounds. Show flags actually do. It's not on the ground. It's just visual. The show flag debug AI, it's like, to be honest, most of these names, they make literally no sense to what they actually do in game, but figures, wildcards. So debug AI is gonna disable the trees. Light functions is gonna disable the water. Yeah, so basically, as far as I remember, if you do light functions, 0 is actually gonna disable water from the top, where show flag game 0 disables when you're inside water. Show flag navigation 0 is gonna pretty much disable all the particles. So there's gonna be like no flame, no let's see, No poison grenade effect, no dragon effects, all that shit. Light map density 0, I actually do use it for the most part. It makes the game look different. It removes pretty much all lighting from the game. That's why it's always day. I always use that. Streaming bound 0, don't use that. It just makes everything black. And there's, you know, some other lines of code that, you know, you can pretty much go through. One more thing important, this config works best with direct 10. So you do need to use this at the very least in the launch options. Basically, like some lines of code, like the one which removes leaves from the trees and shit, that doesn't actually work in DirectX 11, only works in 10, so you do need to run that. Oh yeah, one more interesting thing. It doesn't work anymore, but it was really interesting when it did work. Ark client desired net speed. Now, I think that's originally set to, on top of my memory, I think 6000 or some shit. If you set it to 0, you would be... It's like you would be disconnected from the game, but not entirely disconnected. So like the game would never kick you out. You could move around, but only on your client. But anything that you actually access in the UI, that would work. So it's basically, you would turn off like the, I know, your connection, but only to the, I know, physics part of the game. It won't actually affect the UI. So for example, let's say there's a fob, right? I would use this command, I would type 0, I could run up to the fob, and I could just basically pretty much scout it. They won't know I'm there, but I would know I'm there, so I can pretty much like use it for scout. That's one way what you could do with it. And if I was like inside a vault or some shit, I could actually still, you know, modify, you know, drag shit around and stuff. So it was an interesting command. I'm actually not sure how it got fixed. I mean, I'm not sure actually how it got fixed. No one really knew about it, but maybe someone did. So yeah, that doesn't work anymore. For the fog, fog's been the most aids research. It's like there's different, like the lines of code which remove fog on island and say they're different. And here's a screenshot I'm gonna show you. As far as I remember, this combination of lines should remove fog altogether on both island and center. I mean, for the most part, it's not the line of code showflag.fog0. I think that doesn't actually do shit. I can't remember. It's basically like, it's not just one line of code either. It's like combination of few lines that actually create the effect of no fog. As long as you use the actual config which I've supplied in the description, that works best. So yeah, alright, so that's more or less it for the talking part of the video. I've shown quite a bit of exploits. Obviously I haven't shown every exploit that I know. There's still quite a few more. I'm not going to show everything. Hopefully the things which I did show will get fixed. For the most part, that's it. Now I'll play some clips from when I was using the major exploits on the official PvP servers in the past 6 months. Peace.
I And touch the sky, a skylight shines on long after it dies. Oh, in the night, I live every day as if it's your last. All memories been bright like beacons of the past. Oh, in the night, now we race against the sun. Now we race against the sun.
Like a Hellcat.
Like the attention, girl, I know you. But you're everything I want in life. We're fighting danger like kung fu. The love I feel is deep inside. The others don't matter. It's honestly us against the world. We're the perfect team. You're my dream, and I just want it. If you ever need a helper, you should know that I'll be there day and night. Nobody else can love you better. I'm here just to treat you right. You're the reason I'm alive. You're the only pain I can endure. And when you're not here, you're my dream, but I just wanna. Yeah, I just wanna. You're my dream, but I just wanna. rule from start. You my bunny, I'm your clock. From now to eternity, I give you all my heart. We are meant to be, it's clear to see. My love is bigger than I thought. I got everything I want when I hold you with my arms. Now this don't matter, my love and my pleasure, the key to my treasure. Whatever's the weather, day up and out with you till I die. How many times for you I'ma try? Want you to notice the one and I know this perfect soulmate. I wanna show it my best friend. She saved my life, my happy end in hard times. Oh baby, hug it to myself, hug it to myself.